Okay, I'm about to share something with you that I've never shared before, and that is a training on NLP, otherwise known as Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It is a form of communication that is very persuasive. It is a way of almost hypnotizing people while they're awake. And the reason I don't share this stuff is because I know how I use it. I use my powers for good. But I don't know that that's going to be the same situation with every single person watching this video. But today, I'm going to assume that you watching this, you're a good person and you're going to use these powers for good. So in this training, I'm going to share with you how I use NLP to program and train people in positive ways, in ways that help them to get over their fears and ways that help them to be more bulletproof and to feel confident and empowered. You're going to see me use these techniques in real life by answering my students' questions. And I'm going to be using NLP in the first question that I answer, which is a question having to do with how to prospect groups of people when you have bad apples in the bunch. And as soon as I'm done, I later go into teaching the best way to learn NLP. And then I share with everyone watching this live training that I did how I used NLP to answer the previous question. And then in the rest of this training, now keep in mind, you're only seeing a clip. The entire training is something like an hour and 30 minutes where I break down scripts and I read scripts and I inject what I would do to improve them. And therefore, the people watching the entire training are going to get a chance to see some of my best scripts. Actually, the script that's a part of this complete session, which is entitled Session 44, for those of you wanting to look it up inside the Recruit 10 People in 10 Days Challenge. If you're a part of that. If you're not a part of that, then I'll leave a link or something so that you can get on the waiting list for the next time I open up the doors for one of these trainings, where I work with people and give them a blueprint on exactly what to do and what to say and how to act. And I give all my scripts, blueprints, and strategies on how to recruit 10 people in 10 days. It's a challenge that I open up the doors to every now and again. If you're smart enough to find that link, then you have passed the first test showing that you're hungry and ambitious, and you are now potentially worthy of joining this challenge the next time I end up doing one. And if you are able to join one of these challenges, then you can just look up session 44 inside of this group and watch the entire 1.5 hour training that this one segment that you're about to see came from. It's about 15 minutes or so after this little intro that I decided to film to just give this video some context for you so you understand why the first question that I'm answering doesn't necessarily seem to have to do with NLP. But by the time you go through the whole training, you're going to go, oh, I get it. I see how we used it. And then when I reference the script inside of this video and I share some elements of the full script that I have inside of this session 44 video, you're going to hear a clip of it in the ending and the call to action and how I'm editing it. And by me referencing that script inside of this training, you'll get a chance to really see how you can use NLP in sales and in persuasion type environments where you want to embed commands into your prospects and give them some direction of what their next steps are. So again, you can use NLP in a lot of different ways. It's something that I use all the time, every day, without even realizing it, because it's just embedded in my DNA from practicing and mastering it over the past 20 years. So if this is something that you want to learn more about and you join the challenge, just look up session 44 and you'll get a chance to see the whole show. But until then, enjoy this training and make a promise to me to use these powers for good. Let's get to Rolando's question. All right. How do you prospect a group of people, especially when you find out that there's a bad apple in the bunch? If there's a bad apple in the bunch, just consider that person a bully or a heckler. You're a comedian and you're on stage. Sometimes there's a heckler. You're in school. Sometimes there's a bully, right? Sometimes there's someone that wants to open their mouth and mess with you. Here's the deal. If there's a bad apple, you can handle it a couple ways. You can ignore them or you can take them on. Really, those are the two main things that you can do. You can ignore someone or you can just take them on. I like to take people on because I never lose. But that's because I'm very quick and I've done it lots of times. How do you get good at fighting? You fight a lot. You practice a lot. How do you get good at handling bad apples? Handle them. Why not? It's fun. If someone goes, oh yeah, that's one of those pyramid things. Oh, those things never work. You got to get to the top. Be like, wow, sounds like someone's had a bad experience trying something and failing. Is that the deal? Is that what happened to you? Did you have a bad experience? Did someone get you into a scam and take your money or something? What happened? I'll take them on. Because here's the thing. If I lose, I learn. If the guy beats me and they out alpha me, or they're more skeptical and they're more confident than I am, then I have learned a lesson. See, you want to be the most confident person in the circle. If you're approaching 3 or 4 people, be the most confident person in the circle. I actually have a podcast episode where I talk about that. If you guys have listened to my podcast, Be 10 Times Bolder, there's a couple episodes up there that I put just to secure the name, secure the spot. I'll be getting back to the podcast later down the road and creating more episodes. But the 5 up there are masterpieces. And if you honestly just go through them, one of them talks about maybe like episode 3 or 4. It's 3, 4, or 5. I can't remember which one. But it's strong. And I share a story on how to talk to people in groups. So take them on or ignore them. So how do you ignore someone that's being loud? Oh, it's one of those pyramid things, blah, blah, blah. The thing you got to understand is when you walk away, they're going to say all their noise. They're going to say it. If they don't, that's the worst case scenario. It's the quiet apple. That's the bad apple. That's a scary one. If someone opens their mouth, I want to handle every objection or every negative thing that they're going to say because I'm there to defend my stance and my company. If they don't, and I just ignore them and I walk away, the downside of that is whatever they would have said, if they're like, oh, it's one of those pyramid things. Oh, God, one of these guys. And I just ignore them and I'm like, well, I'm not really talking to you. I'm more talking to this person. They seem to be the more open-minded, interested person, so I'm going to just focus on there. If you don't mind, like I'm going to talk to them. But the thing that you got to remember is they're friends if they're next to each other hanging out. So when I go away, he's just going to talk smack about me. So I like to handle it head on. Take him head on. If you get beaten intellectually, learn from it. But you got in a practice fight. Doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. There's so many people. Like, who cares? Who cares? Like, I love getting into fights with people, intellectually speaking, right? Little debates, little battles of the wit. That stuff is hilarious. It's great. It's awesome. I get upset when I don't get into more of them. I'm like, man, I'm going to get dull if I don't sharpen this axe on something. All right. What materials do you recommend to learn about NLP? NLP, man, it's advanced stuff, neuro-linguistic programming. It is not easy to learn. It's found a lot more and used a lot more in copywriting, which is the art of sales copy, writing very persuasively. There's lots of NLP in copywriting. So sometimes when you study copywriting, you'll learn NLP. I learned NLP primarily from studying Tony Robbins, who's the grand master of them all. Whether he ever admits it or not, he is probably the best in the world at NLP, right? So NLP, it's just a way of programming people and speaking. It's neuro-linguistic programming, and it's just a way of communicating with people that embeds a lot of commands. It uses a lot of analogies. Pretty much most of the time that I'm talking to you guys, there are elements of NLP in it. Every time you see me drop a script, it's loaded with NLP. It's programming my prospect. Like, look at this script. So the best way to honestly learn it is to learn it from watching people like me and Tony Robbins. If you watch people like us and how we talk, it's found in the stories, the analogies, and the metaphors. If you dissect the stories, the analogies, and the metaphors I use, you'll see elements of NLP. So even just saying that last statement, if you do this, you will see elements of NLP. I'm telling you, and I'm embedding commands inside of the things that I say. If you look at Christie's script, for example, an embedded command is a command that you give somebody. It's something that you layer in that is commanding people to do something. So for example, all right, if this sounds like something you're interested in, hit me back, drop me your number, and I'll give you a call when I can squeeze in a couple of minutes and see if you're the right type of candidate. Did you hear the embedded command? You're just telling someone what to do, but you're embedding it with a whole lot of other things and ending it with like, to see if you're the right candidate. So it ends with a statement of like, hey, we'll see if you're the right candidate, which is very postured. But what did you say? What do they have to do to find out if they're the right candidate? They're going to have to hit you back, drop you their number, and then you'll give them a call. So there's a lot of things that you're saying in here. This is NLP. The mentors that I tend to like people who are driven, hardworking, and make an impact. And by the looks of it, that seems to be you. So you're basically telling them, this is what I'm looking for. You're starting to embed little elements of things that you're looking for. So these are all forms and pieces of what NLP is. NLP is far more. It's far more than just embedding commands. Embedded commands are one element, one thing that falls under the umbrella of NLP. I'll try and think now of things that I say and do, or things that I've even said in this conversation. I'm going to put a little piece of my brain right now to work, so just excuse me. I'm just going to put a little worker out here to just, as I'm continuing to answer these questions, I'm going to also put a little piece of me out here that's just going to be in the background thinking. It's like I'm going to open up a window and run searches on all the things that I've said here and answering these different questions that will help you to understand what NLP is. Okay, actually, boom. Man, that guy's good. He already's got one. The way that I shared with you the example of a bully. And I said, hey, there's two ways to take on a bully or a heckler in the audience for a comedian, right? That's what I want you to picture yourself as. If you're a comedian or if you're going to take on a bully, what are the two ways to handle it? You ignore them or you what? Take them on. See, that was NLP. I basically created a metaphor and an analogy, and my brain just, I'm so used to doing it, and I'm so well versed that it comes off completely off the cuff. And I didn't just come up with one, I came up with two really good examples that put you in a position where you're like, yeah, it's like standing up to a bully. Yeah. If anyone watching this felt like, yeah, you stand up to bullies. Like, yeah, you ignore them. If that made sense to you and you felt that, or if you're like, yeah, a comedian, that's right. They take them on, they take on the heckler, or they just ignore them and keep going with their set. Right? But what do the best do? The best take them on. The amateurs who are afraid to get into a little intellectual battle, they stay away, they ignore. And then I also told you, I shared again, NLP stories like, hey, the thing about it is it's fun to take these people on. There's plenty of people. This is me programming you and getting you to feel good about the idea that if you go to take on someone and intellectually you lose, it was a learning experience. Everything that I did in that entire set was complete NLP. I NLP'd everyone watching this right now to feel good about taking on bullies. And if you fail, you've learned. And the benefit to doing that is think about how you're now going to be bolder about taking on people. And then if you fail, you're going to feel like you won anyway. You're going to be like, hey, I'm still winning because I'm learning. Can you already imagine how you'll feel in that situation when you get rejected or get taken down? You're going to be like, that's no problem. That's no big deal. You're just going to be like this, like how when you're in a fight and you're just like, whatever, man, like that ain't nothing. Brush that off. You're just going to brush it off your shoulder. Why? Because of the little bit of storytelling that I did to do that. That's why NLP is primarily used for therapeutic purposes, for counseling. And that's also why it's very hard to learn about it, because when you start to do research on NLP and you start to pick up books, like I have books on NLP, introducing NLP. I can see one in my bookshelf right now. I don't even know if I've read that book, but there's I probably have, but I just take little pieces out of it. And the reason why I can say that, like, I don't know if I've read that book is because it didn't impact me very much. Because the majority of NLP that I got was from watching and studying people like me. I studied Tony Robbins. I went to multiple events. I watched him. That's why the retreats that I do, and I'm going to probably do one more because I have to do one more retreat. And there's probably like 1 or 2 spots left. Like no BS. I have 4 bedrooms in my house, or 5 bedrooms. I sleep in one, obviously. And, we have 2 people that are already prepaid from 2 years ago to be at the next retreat that I'm going to do, probably coming up in the fall. I will be opening that up. That's basically an NLP retreat. I don't advertise it like that, but everything that I do is NLP programming everyone that comes to these retreats and then teaching them how I do it. So getting certified in NLP, it's a very expensive process, and a certification basically means jack diddly. Like the people that have certifications in NLP, I've met so many of them, and they can't touch me in that area. So very hard to learn. The retreat is the best thing to do that I do. If you're interested in doing that, message me. I can show you a link to where you can learn more about them. And there's a legit application process. And there's only 2 rooms left at the next one that I'm doing. This isn't meant to be a promotion for my retreats by any means. This is just to let you know, in case you're interested, there is that option, because there's like 1% of people will really be like, I want to get on the level of mastery where I'm untouchable and I never lose in any kind of intellectual battle or communication, and I can recruit people at will on demand. Because basically NLP is like learning hypnosis, and it's so effective in your personal life for making friends, influencing people, training, building a business, sales, recruiting, raising kids, any of that. Because it's just basically like, imagine being able to hypnotize people when they don't even know it. Like the way that I answered Rolando's question. Some of you guys, you appreciated the answer and it was probably helpful, but you probably didn't know until I just dissected that how many layers of programming that I was doing to your subconscious mind to bulletproof you for situations. So when you encounter a group, you feel emboldened to go out and do that. You're like, oh man, there's a group. I got nothing to lose. It's a group of people. Worst thing that happens is there's a bad apple there, and I get to learn something. I get to take them on. I get to spar. Even the fact that I mentioned, like, yo, if I don't get into some battles like this every now and again, if I don't get some pushback, I love it. It's like I start to feel like my axe is getting dull. How I just nonchalantly slid that in there, and it's 100% true and authentic, but it's a story, axe sharp, if I don't get into battles, intellectual, ciphers, like rap battles, where they battle each other. If I don't get into some, and they call those ciphers, right? When you're rap battling against people, like, yo, if I get into some of those, my axe starts to feel like it gets sharp. The way that I even looked down and was like, man, like that type of stuff, if someone was an expert in NLP watching me, they would go like, this guy's the fucking GOAT. Like they would, because they would be like, wow, even the way that he looked down, and it was just like a nonchalant little statement, but it had so much power. People that were true NLP masters would look at this and they would be like, every movement this dude does feels like it's artwork and it's calculated. But I'm so unconsciously competent, it's just how I am. I'm doing it knowing that I'm programming you. My body language, the way I shift my eyes, move, everything, it looks like it's deliberate, but it's just very free flowing because I'm just a natural at it. Like if you saw someone pick up a basketball, here I go again. If you saw someone pick up a basketball and they just started going to town with it and they were like a Harlem Globetrotter, you'd be like, man, dude, that guy is amazing. He makes it look so easy. Because it's just natural. They've just done it. Like they just do a half-court shot like it's nothing. And you're like, oh my God, it looked like the guy was shooting a free throw. It was a half-court shot and it went right in. Practice, practice, practice. And then it just looks natural. So that's how you learn NLP. This training is probably the best NLP training that you could get. You could buy 17 books and not get everything that I gave inside of this training alone. So hopefully you appreciate that. If you do, then let me know in a comment below. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And thank you for all the amazing questions. And I look forward to answering your questions again next week inside the Recruit 10 and 10 Challenge.